Good evening, good evening, good evening. It's just gone 10 o'clock and you are with Big Hairy News and welcome to the show. Hohepa Thompson, good evening, sir. Kia ora to you.
Kia ora.
Good to be with you, man.
Cheers, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. It's fun. We're going to have a bit of a chat. Yeah, so thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for coming on board today. You okay? How's your day been? You busy? I'm assuming you're busy at the moment because of what's going on with the petition, eh?
It's been a real long week.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks, yeah. So I've this will be the last kind of interview for a while.
Well, thank you.
No, all good, bro. I'm real keen to kind of do this, and then I'll just kind of crawl into my little cave for a little bit, and then come out for the next thing.
Do this and then sleep for 2 days, something like that.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we've got you on board, and we always talk about kind of whatever comes up naturally and whatever flows out of the kind of authentic conversations here, Hohepa. Right. But one of the reasons, obviously, you're here is about the petition to officially name the country Aotearoa and it being delivered to Parliament this week. Were you there at the delivery? Because you're at Otaki, which is basically just north of Wellington. Were you at Parliament when it was delivered?
Yep. So I actually, me and Aotearoa handed it over to the office, around 12 o'clock. And, it was good to be a part of it. It'd been a real kind of long journey for me in the last few months. And everything kind of worked up into that kind of part of it. So, we got the 70,000 signatures.
Yep.
And, there was 3,000 kilometers of driving around Tika Maui, wow. Having these conversations and trying to create awareness around the history of the renaming of Aotearoa. So these are the kind of questions and we wanted to have in discussions, and to have other people's opinions on it was really cool. To try to give them more Māoritanga and knowledge from a more Māori world view.
Yeah. Which I was thinking. I think, do you need about 300,000 to get a referendum? Was there ever a conversation about trying to get to that point to make it a referendum rather than a petition?
Not that I had a yarn with, but Rawiri did say something yesterday, which it's true. When things go to referendums, and especially for Māori, it usually doesn't go well. We're not the majority here, so when the minority's in a referendum, it's hard in a democracy to kind of do that. So I think if it does come to that, it happens. But I think if we were to base it more on a treaty kind of partnership type of thing, I think that's what we would probably want to be going for. But if it goes to referendum, at least it's done. It's done its job. It's gone over the table and it's in process and getting done.
Yeah.
But he talked about kind of it being the pebble that drops in the water, and those discussions are now that swell that is now happening across the motu, over all the motu of Aotearoa. So that's kind of where I see it. Yeah.
So when you deliver a petition to Parliament, what happens then? Because obviously if you deliver enough to have a referendum, then a referendum is triggered. But when you deliver a petition, is that basically just a symbolic act to say to the politicians, lots of people want to look at this. Can you please look at this?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the entire process, but from what I understand, it gets read out in the House next Tuesday, actually, about 2 p.m. And then it goes in, and it will either fall on a Māori kind of like a table with, you know, all people that are sitting at the Māori side will put it out and have a kōrero around it. Yep. And then from there, they will debate of what would happen next. Someone said something that was quite awesome, actually, a couple of days ago, was, 3 years ago when the Matariki thing was put in, everyone thought that was an absolute no-go, and, and here we are 3 years later, and it's actually been pushed through, and we're finally officially about to celebrate Matariki as Aotearoa, not just as Māori that are doing it every years. So that's how I kind of see this. This is the beginning of it.
Yep.
And I think as an artist who's kind of in this kind of mahi, it's kind of my job to keep this conversation happening, to not let it witter out, and to kind of keep pushing this kind of narrative into a more mainstream kind of space. Yeah.
Dude, I'm so looking forward to Matariki. I'm like, finally, there's like, there's Waitangi Day and there's Matariki, and they're really the only ones that we can own, because all the other ones are imported ones or associated ones, which are great. I mean, no one's saying they don't like Christmas. Let's be honest about it. But to have that idea of another kind of New Zealand holiday or public holiday, an Aotearoa, a Kiwi, it just, I'm freaking stoked for it, bro. I think it's going to be wicked. And also, so many of our holidays are based on Northern Hemisphere traditions in the Southern Hemisphere. Like, not that it's a holiday like Guy Fawkes. It's ridiculous because you have fireworks in November when it's not dark, and Christmas you have all these big heavy foods like turkeys and all those traditions. Whereas this is going to be party central, fireworks. I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
We've got a pretty mean weekend sussed out as well. But yeah, and going on that, even this weekend we're celebrating our queen. We've got our kuia out here, Auntie Queenie Rikihana. So she'll be the only queen that we'll be celebrating this weekend. So she'll be coming down here to the cafe and to the gallery, and we're going to do a big feed. And it's true. It's so true. We have all of these things that are we celebrate like this weekend that we really don't have anything to do with. So it's interesting when we talk about place names and people that are supposedly from our history, that some of them have not even been here. And this is the kōrero that we want to, this is the same kōrero that we want to kind of give people awareness to that. Yeah.
Now you just pulled me up there with your tongue in your cheek a little bit when I said, a New Zealand kind of holiday. How do you address that now for yourself? Do you never ever use the word New Zealand, or do you say Aotearoa New Zealand, or do you only say Aotearoa for you personally?
I only say Aotearoa. And that's how I'll say it with my whānau. I catch myself all the time, I'm only human, but it was a funny thing on the trip when we were traveling around. Whenever someone said it, we'd be like, oh.
It's like a swear jar. Put some money in the swear jar.
Oh, no, it wasn't like that. I mean, it's just kind of, it was just like between us. We're like, whenever you said it, you're even like, oh, what was that, sorry? And then, but it's going to take a while to kind of do that. But yeah, I've made a conscious decision that I'll only ever call this place Aotearoa. It's just that when you just take down the facts and you just simplify it, scrape it all back, New Zealand makes no sense. To me, anyway. It's just
Explain that. Explain why.
Because someone came from 18,000 kilometers away, came to our shores, didn't get off the boat, then took down that the place he had been, and then later on that Dutch, the map makers and all that, thought it looked like the province of Zealand, which is 18 k's away. And then from that moment in history of someone writing it down on a book changed the course of our people that they saw that were sitting on the island, and all of the people that were sitting there. For me, that just makes no sense.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever kind of relate back to that kōrero. I can respect that people will always call it New Zealand and kei te pai, that is their thing, but not me. And nor my whānau growing up, like they'll always know that history of New Zealand, that'll always be there, but I want them to grow up knowing our stories and our histories and our people that came here, and Kupe, his wife, and all of those people that are descendants. They're not just figments that didn't, these people came here. If you talk to Ngāpuhi up there, that's the whakapapa, that lineage. And I think that's the really hard thing to explain to people about our history, because they want book. They want, things written in a book.
Yeah.
And they can't understand that Māori side and the Māori history and the way we our knowledge systems and how we passed all of that knowledge down.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to give comparisons to in this journey. So, one of the things I said to a lot of people on the road was, you guys had your puka puka, your encyclopedias, inks. We had our moko that was ingrained. Our ink was ingrained into our skin. And, you had your libraries and that. And we had our wharenui that were, tuku were woven into the walls. They were carved into our things, trying to give some comparisons into how our histories was handed down. And just because it wasn't written in a book doesn't mean that shouldn't be acknowledged.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to have. And then again, when you think about how like the colonizers would work, is that, they controlled the narrative. So everything that was written in the book, people took as gospel, like scribes would write things down. They would stop and go, off the record. What are we going to do here?
Yeah.
So, that's how, especially in England, that's how they controlled so many things, that was how they did it. And I think Māori realized the power of that, and that's one of the arguments that I fucking hate, to be honest, is if it wasn't for us, you haven't have a written language.
Yeah.
I'm like, we didn't fucking need one. We didn't need one. We already had our own way to do things. It's and that's just a shit chat. Like that doesn't make any things like. Of course, it's amazing that we had it. We saw there was a way to communicate to everyone, but we didn't need it. It wasn't the way we did things. So. Yeah. So
the written language is just a form of communication, which therefore means if you have another form of communication, it's just another alternate. It doesn't mean better. It's just another way of doing it.
Yeah, and that's massive. Is that word better? And this is the better way to do it. It's just like.
Hey, I want to give an example. And look, I kind of feel a bit weird. I'm probably the wrong person to tell this story, but I've been told this story by very trustworthy people, so I believe them. And I want to give an example of kind of what you're talking about.
Okay.
Between what then gets written down and what the truth is. Like in the curriculums in New Zealand schools, and we all know the story about Hohepa and how he was a troublemaker who cut down this flagpole, right? That's the story that we hear. Now, my understanding of the story, and you will correct me if I'm wrong, is that the story actually goes, there was an agreement between settlers and Hohepa to fly a flag. He went to his forest and cut down trees. He carved the flagpole for the trees, or got it carved. So he owned the flagpole. Then a different flag was flown. So in other words, the agreement was broken by the settlers. So he went, nah, fuck it. I'm going to cut my flagpole down. Now, if that's accurate, and I've been told by some incredibly senior Māori figures who I trust with that, then that's a completely different spin on the story that was written down versus what was potentially true. Do you know the story well? Have I got anything right there?
Was that the Whakaputanga flag?
Yeah, my understanding is he wasn't someone who went and cut down a British flag because he didn't like the flag. He cut down his own flagpole, which he got from his own forest, which he built because there was a disagreement that a flag was flown he didn't agree to. And when you think about it like that, you're like, well, that's fair enough. It's his. When you think about it like, oh, you know, the settlers' flags and stuff, he sounds like a troublemaker. And it seems to me to be a different way than when something's written down and story told versus potentially passed down.
Yeah, and that's with everything. Like, you know, that's you know, the different truth that people see. You know, this it's so subjective to people, and you know, but when you have a dominant people kind of really pushing that narrative on a, you know, on people, it's kind of hard not to take that, you know, for gospel. Like, as I said, like, you know, and we know about this now when you look at the media. Like, you know, 20 years ago, what was on the news was, oh, wow, well, that really happened.
Yeah.
Fuck, now, man, people question everything because they know how things are manipulated. It's exactly the same as it was when it was written down in books, you know, but no one questioned it, because if you questioned it, fucking later, bolt. It was like, you know, so that's what we're trying to offer here, is that each one was just as good as the other. And then we even wanted to go further and like go into like, you know, your pen drive. You know, you have your pen drive. We've got fucking our karakia. You know, you got your hard drive.
Yeah.
And you know, we've got our motetia.
Yeah.
You know, this is how our knowledge passed through. And even though those colonial people fucking hacked us, ruined our hard drives and everything, we still fucking, it was so strong that we still were able to dial that up from some terabyte thing, you know, that was, you know, He Waiata tuku iho that came down from here, our whakapapa, it was grained, you know, all of those things, we still stayed strong, and now it's as strong as ever. So when people talk about that, I'm always just like, fuck, man, we did pretty good for you know, people that had an unwritten language and fucking, you know, were just fossils, to fucking hold on to that after it tried to get wiped out. Fuck, you can't argue that that's not some pretty amazing history and knowledge, and a way of being able to pass it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a story once out of Queensland about scientists had discovered, like, under the sea floor, they discovered evidence of a massive flood, and they could see damage to the seafloor, and that was all these scans and stuff that they did. Aborigines in the area had been telling that story for 500 years, because they were there when they told it, and the stories they still told today lined up with the science who found this shelf under the sea 500, 1,000 years later. So I completely hear what you're saying. And I think it's pretty evident through world history that the spoken word and the word that's passed down is not necessarily any less accurate than the written word. In fact, sometimes you would argue it's more so. So no.
And that's what we've tried to offer, that lens, especially to that older kind of generation that are still stuck in, like, this is everything, They don't have that insight to kind of go and challenge that. And with me, obviously, with the work that I do, I'm like the Maori kind of whakapapa that kind of, I'm always asking questions and always like being that hoha whaka that's like, nah, that doesn't make any sense. And then I follow that kind of path. Sometimes it gets me into trouble, sometimes it doesn't. But, it's that kind of side that I get myself into these kind of situations, but it adds mātauranga for me. But also, like in the last kind of 10 years that we've been doing it, we've been able to offer so many people that just never would have ever thought of it that way, because it is so hard to explain the depths of Te Ao Māori and where that will take you. Like, to try and explain it to someone, our uncle explains it like if you tipped a cone that's on the road upside down and you looked in it and it would spiral down like that. That's the depths in which this thing goes to. Like, it's just never ending. And even myself coming back into Te Ao Māori, I'm only just scratching at the surface there. It's like you talk to some people, like you talk to, was it Tom Roa?
Yep.
People like that just, that knowledge is just pouring out. And once you go down that cookie jar, you start going in there, it's actually mind-boggling how fucking crazy and amazing our world is.
Yeah.
And all we're trying to offer is little bite-sized pieces of that world to people to kind of bridge the gap between Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā. Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you bridge the gap?
So for me, my way of doing it is the artwork.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So whether it's done with kupu, I work with a lot of kupu whakawhiti, we call them, like transliterations, but not necessarily kind of. Some would argue that that. Oh, you're doing your thing. Some would argue that, kupu whakawhiti or, transliterations don't actually come from a Māori worldview whatsoever, because, they are just translating something to make more sense for people in English. This is one of the arguments that a lot of, Facebook historians love to chuck at me is the, Māori adopted New Tirani in the whakaputanga and the treaty. And it's like, well, let's look at that, really. Let's look at, did we whāngai a kupu? Like, we would call that to whāngai a kupu. The kupu itself is a kupu whakawhiti. So its whakawhiti is to change it. And like I said, a lot of Māori would argue that they're not actually come from a Māori worldview whatsoever.
Right.
When you look at New Zealand and New Tirani, the same would be if I said kapu tea. It's the same as kapa tea.
Yeah.
So, all those words that we call, those transliterations are made to make it easier for them. And that's all that happened in the treaty. There was like, oh, right, they call it New Zealand. New Tirani it is. Like, it's not we're gonna, it's not like we're gonna take this like kind of kupu and it's gonna be like, it's it's when I say that, give that comparison to kapa tea and New Tirani, people are always like, oh fuck, I thought it was like, and again, that's a mana of a kupu, like someone, whoever gives the mana to that kupu, it is what it is. But for me, I kind of like, I look at New Zealand and I'm like, I don't 10, 20 years ago or 10 years ago, I would definitely be like, oh yeah. But through my journey now, when I kind of, now I just like that doesn't make sense for who I am. And for a lot of Māori, to be honest, share that. And saying that, there's a lot of Māori that think, that Aotearoa New Zealand, that's an amazing way to recognise both sides of that kōrero. And yep, that's a different argument as well. But yeah.
You have a personal choice to call it Aotearoa only. Do you kind of acknowledge though it'll probably, I'm going to say not in my lifetime, be Aotearoa only. Like, I mean, the likely solution, if it does get some kind of official change, will be Aotearoa New Zealand. Do you think that, or do you really hope and want to push that it's literally just Aotearoa officially, and then sort of New Zealand becomes the colloquial way to reference it as opposed to the official name?
I'm a bit of a realist as well, bro. Like, I can definitely see that. And, we talked about this just before we handed in about Māori always taking the back seat, in everything, for far too long. And there's our tupuna and our people before that fought to push us up into the front seat. And for things like this, I know some people might think it's petty, but it's not. It's about acknowledging the things that we hear first. And whether that is Aotearoa by itself, or Aotearoa New Zealand, or Aotearoa NZ, it's my whole kaupapa for this is simply for acknowledgement of that kupu, and of those stories and histories that come with it. It also is about setting precedents for other things to happen from that.
Yeah.
That's like, we're already down here with the street names, the town names. That's happening down here. Fuck that. Let's go right to the top. Let's have a fucking bold fucking chat about this. Yeah. And let's just go right to the top and have that kōrero. If that happens there, the trickle down effect that happens from that, that's massive for Māori. So even though people think that it might be something kind of petty and something to think of like that, we're thinking big picture here. Like, it's about doing that, mahi. It's strategic. It's a way to kind of be like, you know what, fuck, if this even happens, like Matariki, if this happens, holy shit, what's next, man? Fucking, and that's the kind of kōrero that I love. It's that push forward. It's Māori kind of just finally starting to, recognize that there's a fucking voice there.
Yeah.
And it needs to be heard. And I've felt this, like, the last kind of, I've been doing this for 10 years since I got home. And for the last kind of 4 or 5 years, I've really felt this, and I said this in this like shift, like, and you can't fucking deny it either, like in Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā and Tauiwi as well, this shift to kind of like, fuck, a lot of my Pākehā friends, Tauiwi friends, they're like, wow, man, fuck, I just did not even think about this. My best mate, going, fuck, I didn't even think about this at all, because we didn't grow up with that education. And, again, with that trickle down effect, if that knowledge is heard up here, trickles down into our schools, our education, and then it just happens like that. The waterfall falls down, the pool falls up, and then, I don't know. I hope it will happen in my lifetime, bro. I'm pretty confident that something in that way will happen. I really hope that the Hobson's pledge and Brash get to fucking see it. I seriously hope they just, hanging on like like at the last breath, like in Braveheart when Longshanks finds out that, just like whispering in his ear.
Oh yeah, your lineage dies with you, whatever she says to him in his eye. Let's have a chat about that. But let's also, to people watching, if you want to join in, we are live at the moment, unless you're watching this like when it's not live. It's just coming up 10:30. You can make a comment in the platform that you're watching us, be that on YouTube or on Twitter or whatever, and it comes through to us. If you've got a comment or a question, and I think Hophepa's fine to take questions on either side of this. If you disagree, welcome to throw it out there. I'm sure he's heard every point before 1,000,001 times. In fact, one of the points you talked about before we came on air was the first question that came through about cost of doing this. But you're welcome to join in. But trust me, if you want to do it, get in shortly-ish, because I'm loving this chat and I will take up all the time if I can. So now let's have a look at Hobson's pledge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have had a kind of response to Hobson's pledge called Hori's pledge. And actually the front page is where we'll have a look at the music video on the front page, which is, it's, what's his name? Gambino.
Childish Gambino, yeah.
Childish Gambino song. So this is your version.
Okay.
Your version.
We just want to colonize you. They just want to keep colonizing you. I'll just pledge the cheek. I'm coming for you. Don't you stupid creep. That means you too. We just want to colonize you. They just want to keep colonizing you. I'll just pledge the cheek. I'm coming for you. Don't you stupid creep. That means you too.
I don't know if that'll get us kicked off YouTube in the replay because it might be taken as a Childish Gambino song, but there you go. So
I recorded the entire music.
Oh, and the backing at the end of it as well, because the end of it sounds like you go into the actual song. It's a good track. It's a direct response to Hobson's pledge. So why don't we have a chat about the part of Hobson's pledge, which is New Zealand, not Aotearoa, which is I'm sure how they say it. And their position is Dutch explorer Abel Tasman named our island as New Zealand in 1642. Māori adopted this name. They used the name in the treaty. The name Aotearoa first appeared in writing as a Māori name for New Zealand in 1855. New Zealand translated from the Dutch New Zealand is a beautiful and appropriate name for our islands. And that's one of their billboards, I think. It's the cheapest, most tacky. I've seen this floating around and I thought it was just someone, some 73-year-old man who made it in his bedroom. Mind you, maybe it was. Maybe Don did it himself. And yeah, they have a pledge overall. Their so-called Hobson's pledge is to try and moving forward as one. Now, I've got a lot of things to say about that concept of moving forward as one. But why don't we just talk first of all about the pledge about New Zealand, not Aotearoa, and that's the thing that sparked you into Hori's pledge.
Yes. Yep. Before that, I'll just talk about that video.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Only because there's so much layers to that video that people won't understand. And to give that Māoritanga now, I think will make this kind of chat as it goes on. So basically, the Pākehā guy that's walking across there, when you come into a marae, you would stand at the waharoa. So that would, and then you would get welcomed on.
Right. So he just walked on.
Yep. So the Pākehā man, he walked across the marae, all right? And where he's actually sitting there is where tangata whenua would sit, okay? And that is a massive no-no. So for him, this is kind of representing that ignorance, of Hobson's pledge, kind of walking across there, sitting down on the place where tangata whenua would sit.
Right. The place of pride,
he opens
the place
up
of
his
importance.
Magazine.
Yep.
That's New Zealand, not Aotearoa. That's the actual thing. And then it brushes back into where I am. Now, I'm standing in the maho there, all right? And so in our culture, outside of the maho there on the marae is the place of tūmatoanga. That's the place of war. So when you go into a marae, the whai kōrero and everything is done on the marae there, and everyone will sit. You have manuhiri that will sit on one side and tangata whenua that will sit on the other. And that is where people would do their talkings. So when that was the realm of tūmatoanga. So that's where fucking war happened.
Right.
Because if they didn't agree with what was getting said on those things, that's when fucking things got serious. So shit happened on the marae, and that's why marae is so important to our people. These days it's done with, it's more about your debate and your chat, and that's whose argument you win. So people who can flourish in whai kōrero, that's their zone. So for someone to walk across there in their ignorance and sit down there and talk about, read the paper and talk about things that they have no fucking idea about, That is why you'd have a person that would come out who's the whittle and would be like, what the fuck is this? Boom. So, that's what that piece is about. That's, and I think that's important to explain here.
Yeah, for sure.
Because even when Brash saw that, he didn't understand that. I explained this to him, like, this is what happens. These are our, you weren't welcome into this fucking thing, but you've just walked across, with your strong opinions about Māoridom, but your ignorance is that you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. So, that's the kind of kōrero, and that's what the layers that are kind of behind this piece. So that's the thing. But coming into the Aotearoa New Zealand, New Zealand, it's not Aotearoa. This was the catalyst that started it. When I saw those fucking hotchy-potchy shit billboards, I was like, I couldn't get over it. I was like, wow, fuck, these guys are actually for real. And once it took me a year to kind of plan this. So I sat and stewed for about a year about how I was going to do this, because in normal Hori, I would just go and fucking tag the fucking things up, And I thought, no, you know what? They need a bit more kind of a bit more than that. They need something a bit smarter. So it just sat and dwelled with me for about a year, and then I thought, you know what? This is perfect to kind of do this. When that the petition started last year, I thought, okay, it's time to unleash this. Then the planning started to go forward. Yeah.
And what did you do? Tell people what you did for the planning. How did you address this around the country?
So it started with kōrero, so I could gain more mātauranga from people. So I started interviewing MPs, people that kind of had a somewhat of a relationship, knew that type of person. Again, learning that enemy, learning what I was going to get myself into. And I think that was massive for me. I talked with Chloe Swarbrick, Manama Davis, we had Rāori, Deb, and then we've got Penn and Kitty coming up soon. So, and there's other people about their kind of feelings around it. And then I kind of, through design and process, developed this is Aotearoa thing. And my whole whakaaro was to, they talk about, knowing, through knowing the having knowledge and understanding that they can move forward as one. The thing about moving forward as one is that you need to have knowledge and understanding of that other side that you're trying to move forward with. Yeah. So with my whakaaro was to try and offer that mātauranga and offer that insight. And so what we did was we began this massive billboard. And if you read the kind of sides of it, it says, are we able to be called Aotearoa now? There were some interesting comments about people saying, oh, he can't even fucking spell able, And I was like, oh, come on, bro. Come on, give me a bit more. And anyway, but, and we decided we would take this massive 5-meter billboard, attach it to the car, and we would start our trip around Aotearoa. So we started with Te Ika o Maui, and it was 3,000 Ks from Parliament, all around Taranaki, up to Rerenga Wairoa, down through Tauranga, across the Whakatane, all across the east there, into Te Tairāwhiti, down through Wairarapa and back to Parliament. Did that in 5 days, 3,000 Ks, spread, to get that awareness and really start to push this kōrero. And that's the first leg. The second leg is the go-to to Waipounamu. I know the petition's finished and that's mahi's done, but again, our job's not finished until we do the entire of Aotearoa. Right? And there's some interesting kōrero from our Te Waipounamu and Kaitahu Whanaunga down there about, people in Te Waipounamu don't have that connection to Aotearoa, and some people were thinking, well, what's that got to do with us? And I've said a few times I kind of had this, I don't know, epiphany. People might have thought it before, but I kind of look at our islands, or as our motu, as like hapu, like sub tribes. So you've got the north, you've got Te Ika Maui, the south, Te Waipounamu, you've got Rakiura, you've got Stuart down there. We've got Kapiti that's out here, and Raukawa Moana, Mana. You've got all of these islands. They are all hapu, and they all have their mana motu hake, or their own sovereignty. They have their own autonomy. They have their own like mana, and they are integral part of the iwi that is Aotearoa. Yeah. And that's kind of my kōrero when we go down there, because the wero's being chucked at us from down there, and because me and another bro that did the drive, we can whakapapa down to Kaitahu. We think that this conversation needs to be had, and if we are able to kind of push a Maori kind of worldview on it, and it comes from he whakaaro Māori tērā, and that's what I really loved about Tom's kōrero around te pāo.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's our pāo are just there's so, again, like that little movie, there's so much layers that go in there. And then when you talk, what was the one, the treatment, the partnership part, or the equity, and the all of that, I was just like, yeah, bro, that's so on, and a really good comparison for people to understand.
I'm really keen just to also talk to one thing about our friends at Hobson's Pledge. Yeah. And can I be really honest with you? It does feel a bit weird me making some of these points. I feel like I should be, like I did with Tom. The thing I loved about Tom last night was I felt like I was just sitting at the feet and listening to someone's perspective who I kind of can't have, because it's not, I can maybe hear it and understand it, but I can't. It's not my perspective. It's not my life. It's not my bloodline, and I'm not. It's different. Yep. So anything that I say, if you feel free to jump in and stop me or correct me or anything like that. But
bro, go hard.
I think about this moving forward as one, and to me, why it's utter horse shit, like utter big steaming pile of horse shit, is that when people say that, like these guys, these bunch of white right-wing wealthy people, what they're saying is you need to be more like us. That's what they're saying when they're saying we need to move forward as one. Now, in my mind, there's three ways we can move forward, if we even need to, because I also question the idea about moving forward as one. Why? Why do we need to move forward as one? Why can't we move forward as two or three or four? Why does it have to be one? But if it did have to be one, there's three ways we can do it. If I'm saying, let's move forward, you can be like me.
Yep.
Or I can be like you. Or we can find something to be together and be like each other, like in the middle. And my challenge to people who buy into things like the Hobson's Pledge, they're the same people who say things like, oh, these migrants to New Zealand, why don't they assimilate? My first thing I always say to them is, when did you last ask a migrant to come into your house for dinner? Because when you are a visitor to anything, most of the time you need someone to open the door and welcome you in. And if you want them to be a part of you, i.e. one, then you might have to do a bit more welcoming in rather than pointing the finger out at. So I really want to reject this idea from Hobson's Pledge. And the reason I reject it as well, it's steeped in white supremacy and racism to me. And the reason for that is, and I've said this before on this show, and I had David Seymour on a few weeks ago. People who know the show have heard me tell the story. And the reason I said to him, the reason your views come across as racist, when you talk about equity under, we're equal no matter what race we are. So the reason that comes off as racist and people think it's racist is that's the only equity you ever complain about. So you only ever complain about us being equal under the race banner. You never want us to be equal under the age banner or the gender banner or the disability banner, the other protected classes. You only ever want us to be equal as under the race banner. And that's why it sounds racist. This one here is just the same. The only reason they're asking us to move forward is it's under the race banner. They're not asking for 7-year-olds and 30-year-olds to move forward as one, or even male and female. It's always about race. And if all someone's complaining about is race, then in my opinion, it's steeped in racism.
Oh, fuck yeah. You only need to go down the page here and look at all of the campaigns that they have, and go onto their Facebook and look at every single fucking post that they have is about Māori. Free waters, Māori. Fucking New Zealand, not Aotearoa, Māori. Fucking iwi control, Māori. It's all fucking race, always about that race card. And that's the thing. The whole thing, like you said, is just enrooted in racism. They don't think that they're racist at all.
But the thing is that's all they talk about.
I know.
Like, I mean, when you talk about those protected classes, you know, age, race, gender, disability, religion, sexual orientation, no one's saying we should all be equal under religion. No one's saying we should all be equal under age. You know, you're 65, you get a pension. You're 17, you can't drink. We have different rules under the age protected class, but they want us to be all the same under the race class. And that's why it's steeped in racism, because they don't care about any of the other protected classes making us all equal.
Yeah. It's there's so many little arguments there that, you know, that we talked about just before we went on. You know, if you look at the one that they talk about is the money side of it.
Yeah.
You know, and that one just gets me. You know, when I think if you click on it, one of them's the branding issue. There's a branding issue here. You know,
let's come up in the chat tonight.
This is going to cost the country millions and millions of dollars. You know, for one, they don't have any data of how much that would fucking cost, and I really would love to see how much that would cost, because then I would like to kind of put this to them. It's like when you think about Aotearoa and you think around a branding exercise, and you look as a designer, you know, you look for the point of difference that is going to sell, you know, and what's that thing that is seen across the world?
100%.
Look at Air New Zealand. Air Aotearoa would sound better to me, but look at it. Every single part of that is backed by Te Ao Māori. The culture is everything. Anyone that you think about, like, you know, our tourism, you know, all of that came in before COVID fucked everything. But, you know, all of that, how much of our culture, fucking billions of dollars that our culture has brought into here. So don't fucking give me that chat about money. That's the one that really gets me. It's like, this will cost us absolute billions. It's like, yeah, it might do, but look what we fucking bring into this country.
Yeah,
you know,
I also don't think it's necessarily the case that it would cost that much, because for a start, as RNZ reported when they talked about the petition, it's already on our passports, it's already on our money, it's already on our national anthem. So there's a lot of things that actually don't need to be rebranded, because Aotearoa New Zealand's already on all of those things. So
I don't know, maybe they're thinking about their fucking Hobson pledge pens or something. It's just like, you know, it's. And the other argument with that is, you know, other countries have already set precedents for that. They've done it. It's been done. It's not fucking hard.
Yeah.
You know, it might take some getting used to, but it can be done. So that chat is just bullshit to me. When everyone mentions that, I'm like, well, there's money there to do this. And if you look at what Māori are constantly doing for our economy, you know, it's billions of dollars. So I just kind of, that's all I have to say into that. And
Well,
branding
but just before you go on about that, there's a really clear a way for people to understand it who are maybe not Māori like me. All right, is that what is different about New Zealand to any other country? Right. And I used to do this a lot to my talkback callers on News Talk ZB when I was working there. When we'd talk about, the New Zealand culture, I'd go, well, what's different about this country to any other country? I'm sorry, but rugby, racing and beer is taken up by Australia, South Africa and the UK. I'm all these things. And the only thing that's different is the Māori culture. Like, so when you're talking about the culture of this land, that's the only thing that separates us from any other country, which is why I said to you before we started this idea of, I love thinking about the Māori story as a part of my story because I'm a part of this nation and it's a part of the nation's story, even though I'm not bloodlined into it. And because it's what separates us on the world map from any other country. No other country has that culture. Lots of other countries have the other cultures and the other cultural practices that we see in New Zealand.
Right. Yeah. And, when people, I traveled overseas everywhere for about 5 years. And, this is when I'm in a more Pākehā frame of mind, did it completely put my culture to side, traveled overseas everywhere, and the one thing that people would always want me to do was the haka. Every single place we went to, if the things that stood out was, New Zealand's beautiful, and you guys do the haka, and when you think about it, like those beautiful vistas and stuff, and you got to think about this as from a Māori perspective, that our maunga, we see our maunga as our tupuna. So those vistas, those lakes, those roto, those awas, the rivers, everything, they're connected to us. We would walk out and go, kia ora raukaua to the moana out here, kia ora otaki to the awa out here, kia ora tararua, and they are ingrained, and that's when people have that chat. Well, you've got the most things like, I know, but they're like our uncles. Yeah. That's how Māori see them. And when you think about the haka, and Te Rau Paraha, he's our guy of Ngāti Tōrangatira, that's our haka that is echoed across the globe, and that again takes back to that culture. That culture is bigger than the rugby. There are things that people, and it's coming from a guy that's played rugby my entire life. There are things that are bigger than rugby. And in Aotearoa, that's what I remembered, and that was the one thing where I remember consciously going, "Fuck, what an asshole I've been for so long." I was just like, I've just completely put my entire thing to the side, and I realized that this Māori culture was the actual best thing about me. And I was like, fuck, I need to go home. And I came home and started this. So it's, that's kind of my kōrero on that. I know we kind of wafted off, but yeah.
Are you going to be in Parliament on Tuesday when it gets read out or whatever's supposed to happen?
I think we're just going to have a popcorn night and day. Just watch it on the telly.
I guess it will be. Right? Isn't there parliamentary TV? It'll probably be on there, won't there?
Yeah, it will. It'll be there in 2 p.m. on Tuesday. So you can go watch it there, and you can kind of see our planning for our next journey down to Waiponamu. We're going to try and work it.
Did you find on your North Island trip that did you come across people that were kind of like, yeah, no, I don't think so, have a bit of an engagement with them, and they changed their position? Did you find that happening at all?
No, not like when you show up with 3 Māori boys cruising with this big fuck off trailer in a ute and you walk out of the petrol station, no one fucking talks to you, man. we had like mainly the interactions we had were like Māori running out to us, go, "Oh, we've been following you!" Like flashing us down, and we'd pull over and have chats, and it was awesome. But we didn't actually get to have one of those kōrero. I've had a lot of those that in our gallery. You know, that's a place where we can have these chats. And you know, usually, bro, like seriously, once I kind of give my whakaaro about an art piece and where I'm kind of seeing it from, I swear it's like 9 times out of 10, people will be like, "Okay, I got it." You know, I get it.
Yeah.
And you know, there is that one lot that go, "Nah, fuck you." You know, I've had, you know, nearly had to gone toe to toe with a couple. Yeah, like no shit. But you know, you're always going to get that. And the thing that I kind of hate about the Facebook and that is that these guys get to hide behind these things and they get to say their little things. And I'm like, I would love to do a television show of going and knocking on their doors, eh? Just hey, are you fucking Jed 2000 or whatever? Yeah.
Hey, well, so your South Island trip that you're going to be doing, is that sort of in the planning, or do you know when you're going to be in Ōtepoti? Is that out there yet, or is it going to be out there? Because I'll have to come and find you wherever you're going to be when you're in Dunedin.
Oh, bro, yeah, definitely will be there. It's looking like August, maybe. I'm in this fucking sling for about another 6 to 7 weeks. Yeah, and then my rehab starts. So, yeah, I don't want to be traveling with wearing this.
No, for sure. So, what did you do?
Oh, just 20 years of rugby and snowboarding and surfing.
Yeah.
in about 30 different dislocations. So it was time to kind of, you know, start looking after myself.
You're paying for your sins, bro.
Yeah. Too many of these, I think. But I can just do it with the left hand instead. I've
got one of those backs from the rugby days and that kind of stuff. Comment here from coming to Dunedin. You'll have to park in front of the Captain Cook bar when you come to Dunedin for a nice photo op. So there you go.
We'll be there.
There's an invitation.
No, hey, dude,
it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It's been a lot of fun. If I was going to say to you, you know, we've talked about all sorts of things. I mean, you're having these conversations every day, like you say, in your gallery and stuff as well. Have we missed anything, or is there anything you want to leave us with about this conversation or anything else?
I think the main thing's to have these discussions at home. Yep, we're creating awareness and we're doing it away in this campaign, and but the nut or the knuckle or tēnei kōrero, we would say, is for you who are watching out there to have these kōrero with your whānau, with your family. There's no other way to kind of have this kōrero. If you can have it in your tiny little little hapus, and that spreads out into the wider hapuri, and then and this is the beauty of this conversation and why it needs to just keep going on. I know I'm tired of in the last kind of month of talking about it, to be completely honest, but it has to continue, and that's why when you said today, I was like, oh, fuck yeah, bro, and I'm just being honest there. I'm fucking like, okay. Yeah, let's do this. And if you can come in here into Otaki and come to my gallery and have these discussions, and those fucking keyboard warriors have got the balls to fucking actually show up, man, I'll be here. I'll welcome you in. You be manahuri here. I'll feed you. We can have a kōrero and you can fuck right off. But it's this is what my work is about. And it's constantly challenging those narratives and trying to give Mātauranga Māori and what I can to this conversation. Yeah.
Dude, it's been such a pleasure. And look, and I know you weren't like fishing for a compliment or anything, but thank you so much for joining us. I know you didn't need to be here tonight. You know, you've got other things to do and rest to have. So we really do genuinely appreciate you giving us some time to have a chat this evening. Sorry. If people want to find out more about you and see your stuff, it's thehori.co.nz. And then you're all over Instagram and Facebook and stuff as well. But
yeah, you can follow the Hori's Pledge as well. If you go to horispledge.co, I wish it was .ao, but Angola took that. But you can go to the actual page and help us on our next petrol bill all around.
So koha is going towards that sort of thing, just costs for getting the ute around the country?
I mean, if you keep going down, we've done pretty well. You know, it paid for...
cool.
Yeah, man, that was mean. We kind of paid for all of the signage, it was a big job. You know, we've chewed in a lot of stuff to do this, you know, but I think the beauty of it is, you know, doing it with a shoestring's pretty epic. And to get that kind of that focus from people from all around the motu was amazing. So ngā mihi ana ki koutou e tautoko mai tēnei kaupapa. So yeah, big mihi to everyone that helped us out on that.
Right. And a couple of people just coming in saying good discussion tonight, saying another wonderful interview. So people have enjoyed what we've been talking about tonight as well. Hopefully it'll make some small difference somewhere. And like you say, take away what you've heard tonight and share it around the dinner table while you're eating tomorrow night and go from there.
Man.
Hey, Hohepa, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And everyone else is thankful as well. They're still making comments in the chat as we're talking away. When you're in Dunedin, I'll make sure I know when you're here. I definitely want to come in. So I know it'll be a fly through 5 days to do the whole thing, but we'll find you and find out where you are and come and say good day. But it'll be awesome to see you. And just thanks again for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Ngā mihi, Pat. All right. Kia ora koutou for watching. Cheers.